Once upon a time in a podcast far, far away, there was a lady who talked a lot about nerdy subjects, and that lady is me. Salutations. I'm Sina from the Wife Wednesday Radio Network, and this is a quest deep into my mind. So this week on Nerd Questing, I want you all to imagine something similar to that which my own party just went through. You're sitting out on the open road. There's dark woods all around you, but you are on a path that is worn down enough that it's traveled frequently. But you're all sitting there. It's dark. You have a campfire and you're just enjoying each other's company, which is what we're doing today. Today on Nerd Questing, I have Nicole, my wife from the Wife Wednesday podcast, with me. And then I also have first-time guest, my brother, and the person who introduced me to Dungeons and Dragons, Adric. You both can say hi now.
Hi.
Hello. So, Adric, the reason I asked you on this show is because obviously you're the one who introduced me into this world. Mm-hmm. And then you did that probably about a decade ago.
Yeah, pretty close to that.
So I guess I want to know who introduced you and how did you get into it?
You remember like Dusty, Ratzel, Jared, Misha, Jeff.
Oh yeah,
Johnson,
absolutely.
All of
the
them.
Squad.
Like my squad. It was, I think, because it was over winter. Because I remember my feet were wet as hell. Because I walked from mom and dad's house on some slushy snow. Because this was back when Misha and Noah were living in that apartment up above Kenny's house.
Yeah.
I think that's where his mom lived. And I walked in, and they're all getting ready to play D&D. And I'm like, I've never played before. And immediately everybody started freaking out about it. Like, what? You've never played this before? How did you make it through high school without ever playing this once? So Bubbles, I forgot about Bubbles. Bubbles was there.
Okay.
Because he looked at Dusty and he's like, I actually had an alternate character that I was thinking about switching to. He could use it for the night. And I'm not going to lie, this character that Bubbles had made that he wanted to switch to was the most broke-ass shit ever. I was just rolling dice whatever Bubbles told me to do. We walk in to a room, and the first, big monster we came into was a Hydra. So, I'm thinking, this is going to be shit. And then Bubbles tells me, oh, hey, you have this item. Because, what was it? I was like a Ninja Master Thrower. It was 3.5.
That was actually my next question, was what version?
No, there you go. I answered it for you. And that class at whatever level I was at, I don't remember how the build was. This was literally the only time I ever played 3.5. I got 4 attacks, and then I think the item was called the Belt of Battle, which allowed me to basically, it's kind of like an action surge for a fighter in 5e, where you get to tap the item and basically get an extra turn. So I launched 8 attacks on this thing. I was a rogue multi-class. I passed the sneak check, and at that level it was like an extra 6d6. There was so many. I've never rolled so many freaking dice ever. It was stupid. And I killed this thing the first turn, and Dusty was pissed. He was so mad. I'll never forget the look on his face as he started writing down each attack, and then when he finally got the last one, he's like, all right, roll me the last one. And he just looks at me, and his smile turns to do you remember Dusty? He had that kind of weird smile. Yeah, I
remember him a little bit.
You could always tell when he would get peeved. He still smiled, but it was just he just looked at me, he's like, it's fucking dead. Are you kidding me? You killed this boss in 1 round? And then he just looks at Bubbles, and he was just like, this thing may be too powerful. So I think if they did play after that, because, I didn't go back to that session. It was like a one-time deal. I don't even know if they actually played anymore after that, but pretty sure Bubbles got his answer about whatever build he was making, that it was just too broken. It was stupid.
So what made you decide that you wanted to start running campaigns?
It was you guys and a couple of other friends that were all going, man, I wish people still played D&D, but nobody knows how to run it. And after I had seen the game be run in front of me, it kind of made a lot more sense. Like, I remember reading the original box set, that version 1 that Mom had.
Yeah.
I remember reading it as a kid. It made no sense to me. Nothing.
Same.
No sense. I did not understand it. But again, now that I've seen it played in front of me, it does make sense. It's a little harder to figure out, but also kind of simple. Like, your movement, like, you kind of use, like, strings and stuff. However, you're not confined to grid movement.
Okay.
Like,
okay.
Do you remember John or Strawberry?
Yeah.
The version that I played with him, he ran that game. And he kind of did his movement system based on the old school system. But we were still using 4th edition classes, battle system, etc. He just really liked doing that kind of mapping. And some of the stuff that he did with that, especially like the mass battles, it made sense why he did it that way. It almost made it more like playing Risk.
More strategy.
Yeah, so you
placement.
you really could, be like, hey, you guys are fighting armies of things. Whereas if you threw several hundred monsters on the board against us in these editions, they'd just overtake us,
Yeah. So, do you have a favorite character you've ever gotten to play?
I'm digging Iggy a lot. I really...
And Iggy's the character you run in my campaign.
Yes.
Yeah, he's pretty fun.
You can describe Iggy.
Iggy is my first charisma build character. Because again, I only ever I played in Dusty's game. And then I started running games for you guys. And then when that stopped, when I lived out near Jayville, that was when, because, John lived right down the road, that was when I started playing with him, his ex-wife at the time, Casey Brown.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like, we had our little squad out there, and I think his wife's sister played for a while. Oh, and his brother, Jeremiah. But after a while, one person fell out, and then another person fell out. It eventually started getting to the point where it was like the only people who showed up were, John and I. And then it just turned into him and I just kind of bullshitting.
Yeah, just hanging out.
It's not really worth playing, DM to one player. At least not in my opinion. It's very limiting.
Yeah.
Too big of a crowd. It's kind of like, too many cooks spoil the soup, but at the same time, too small of a group.
Doesn't have much flavor.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, as one of the players in my campaign, this is where I was going to ask you to describe your character, but why don't you talk about Iggy?
Well, that was going to be like my whole
actual story.
I was going to finish up with most of the characters I've gotten to play other than those original 2. I guess, okay, I liked the character. I played a paladin in John's game, Zayden. And Zayden was all about being the self-righteous. Like, if somebody was in trouble, he did not look to see if it was going to get him killed. He was just, we have to help these people. Because, he was a big, 10-foot dragonborn. He didn't give a shit. He charged right in. And I kind of liked that because, I was just always the good guy, got to be the hero,
Yeah.
And because of that, because of the storyline, it really kind of turned into where, I was added into this group partway through, but then I very quickly kind of became the character focus. However, like, I like Iggy to play, I guess, as not only just a character, but I also like the combat. I kind of felt like Zidane in that game was just, okay, I run and I smack stuff. I smack stuff and maybe cast some spells, but I really didn't use it that much. Whereas in Iggy, I like the character because he's a charisma character. I never built charisma characters because if I used a character as a DM, it's kind of pointless to try and talk myself into anything.
Oh, yeah.
So it's nice to be on the other side of the screen and really be able to see, okay, how much can I twist this game around with a charisma character? Because even as a DM, there were so many times that I'd be like, man, nobody's a charisma character. Like, this would be really cool if somebody could use some sort of diplomacy or, if anybody here was worth a damn to haggle with. But, when you have somebody who can haggle, do things like that, I guess the role-playing element becomes a little bit more existent.
Yeah.
Whereas in, like,
less mechanics.
If you don't have a charisma character, it's pretty much just very cut and dry mechanics.
Which is all fine and good, but the pretend part's the fun part too.
Yeah.
So, has there ever been is there a session that stands out to you more than any others that either you've ran or you've been a part of?
The side quest with Iggy's mom was hands down my favorite session ever. I'm never gonna forget that.
I am so proud.
It was a mixture of the session and my idea of what his mother was going to be. Basing it off of the I always hated chocolate lady off of,
yes.
SpongeBob. Because, Iggy is an alien from a crash, that crash landed on this planet.
Yes.
And he's stuck here because, well, there is no technology here. There's no way to fix his rocket. Like, it's just not going to happen. And the fact that his mother crash landed there, too. I'm never going to forget the whole bursting in the room. There she is tied up, and because she's such a bitch. Good, Iggy, get over here. I need a fucking cigarette. Never going to forget that. Like, you took that idea I threw for the character.
Ran with it.
And, yeah, it was perfect.
So, having run games before, what do you think the hardest part about being a dungeon master is?
Having to adapt, because sometimes you make scenarios and you think, oh, this looks like the most obvious solution. This is probably what somebody's gonna do. Or like, okay, take Jamie for example. Jamie was that perfect. Okay, I actually have a perfect example. We walked in our campaign out of Corey's. I brought them to a ruined fort that had been kind of recaptured by a group of kobolds. And I'm thinking, okay, Jamie's a big dumb barbarian. He's just going to go rage, charge in, start smacking shit. So I'm leading them up there and I tell him that there's kobolds. And all of a sudden he lights up. Like, holy shit, it's something with the Dragonborn race feed or something that he can pull rank on kobolds. And basically make them think that they work for him.
Oh my gosh.
So instead of it being something where either I was thinking because they had some stealthy people and rope, and I'm like, all right, they're probably going to try and scale the wall and go in through this area where I left less guards on the one wall. That's what I was expecting them to do. No, Jamie just goes walking right up to the gate and starts saying, let me in, bitches. And I'm just like, oh my God, are you kidding me? This is not what I was expecting to have happen. Like,
kind of how we roll in our campaign.
So then it just turned into, because he's not a charisma build character, but he was winning all the fucking charisma checks. So I'm just like, I spent days planning this big fight and they didn't fight him. They walked right into the fucking stronghold. The 2 guards that escorted them in, as soon as they got in and closed the door, they pretty much just shanked them, hid the bodies, and then walked their way right into the leader.
Go figure.
Yeah, I was like, well, okay. And remember how I've explained to you before where, sometimes you prep material and it's like, holy shit, I made weeks worth of stuff in one day. Or sometimes you spend a whole shitload of time making something and, oh my god, they blew through it already. And now I'm literally winging it.
That was tonight.
They killed that boss and I was just like, okay, I'm going to have to wing this because you guys just demolished this or went through a different way, so I wasn't expecting this to be so quick.
Yeah, it was kind of like the second time Mike was with us, and he absolutely annihilated someone, and you're like, well, I didn't have anything else planned.
Yeah.
But we can figure it out.
Yeah, so, what do you think is it about Dungeons and Dragons that keeps you coming back to the hobby?
I'm a very adamant reader, and I would definitely say that anybody who enjoys reading and possibly writing in any sort of way, the best way I can describe Dungeons and Dragons in a short, I guess, paraphrase would be, it is like sitting around a table with a bunch of your really close friends writing a book.
I think that's literally it.
Yeah, I agree.
And, okay, to add it in, to give a little bit of chance, you let the dice somewhat decide what will happen based on what you want to do.
It's collaborative storytelling with rules.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the dice aspect of it, like
the chance.
I can't make that decision. I let something else make it for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say, because like I said, I sat down with, my squad that cold winter day with wet ass feet. And when they laid the charts out and they had the grid chart out and they were playing, as soon as they got into a battle, and I'm looking at this because I had played, a lot of tactical RPGs like Final Fantasy Tactics, Fire Emblem. And as soon as I saw this laid out, I'm like, oh my god, this is what all of those RPG games are based off of. Everything makes sense now.
It's literally turn-based.
Yeah. And
games.
I was sitting there and I'm like, oh my god, it's like getting to play Final Fantasy Tactics with all of your friends. This is cool. I like this.
Well, I'm going to finish it up with one final question today. Do you think this is something you are going to want to continue, like, pretty much the rest of your life? Like, it's a hobby. And it's a commitment.
As long as there are people who want to play, sure. Typically, most of the times that, I have found myself not playing, it's just usually because the people who were interested, their schedules change, people move, etc., and groups just don't meet anymore. And I will definitely say when it comes to this game, it seems like it's feast or famine. Like right now, I have many people who want to play this with me. I've got the group here. I've got the group at Corey's house. I had somebody else that I work with that, he and I talk a little bit, but we don't talk a whole lot. And he comes up to me and he's like, hey, you play D&D, right? I've heard somebody say you do that. I'm like, yeah, why? Oh, my girlfriend's trying to learn how to run a game. Would you be interested in playing sometime? I was like, I'm like, I am kind of booked, but, if you wanted to do this, maybe every few weeks, I might be able to work something in.
The cool thing are those books I have with the one-shots. If you
those
ever want to
nice.
Borrow one, if you're doing something like that, just ask me.
Well, I know he said that he wants his girlfriend to run the game. So it'll be kind of nice, because she wants to learn how. But I guess the advantage to it is I know what it's like being on the other side there. Again, kind of like how you do when you'll ask me, hey, how would you handle this?
Yeah, how would you handle this?
It's for new DMs, I definitely would recommend having a player that has been on the other side of the screen. That way, you've got a little bit of collaboration with somebody who, knows the drill.
My very first session I ever ran was that Christmas one.
Oh my gosh.
And I had 3 DMs at my table, which was great.
Yeah.
Because I had no clue what I was doing.
I was enjoying the fact that, because I was expecting to be the go-to all night. And the fact, what was it? Wasn't it Alex who sat next to you?
Alex
Since
sat
he
next
was
to
right
me.
next to you, you just kept talking to him. I was like, oh, I'm so glad I just get to play
So
right
him
now.
and Jared, because Jared's played for 30 plus years.
Yeah,
That
he's
night
probably
was
played a lot of different editions.
Longer than
too.
I've been alive. Well, I mean,
Dude.
I'm 31 now, but when I met
Yeah.
him, he's been
Yes.
playing longer than I had been alive.
Yeah.
Wow.
That night was intimidating to me as a newbie. It was my first time ever.
Oh my God, that was
I
12
literally
people
was
around
like,
a table.
Oh my God.
It was
Yeah,
And
intense.
everyone there was so experienced except for me and me. Me.
Well, all right. Is there anything else you want to add? One last thing you want to talk about D&D, a statement?
I guess if anybody is interested, I would recommend checking it out on YouTube. I really wish,
yeah.
decades ago, YouTube had existed. Because again, I was almost 20 before I actually got to see this game played in front of me. And I guarantee you if I would have at least seen it at some point sooner, I probably would have gotten into it a lot at a lot younger age. And I guarantee you I would have gotten a lot more of my friends into it as well. Because there are a lot of kids that I went to grade school and junior high with that definitely would have been interested and would have had a lot more time than, we did as young adults trying to do this. Or even now as aging adults.
Yeah, aging.
And it has it has videos explaining more about the class and
How to play them, how to build them.
Because you sent me videos on the Barbarian before we even started this, just so I could figure it out, I guess. And I mean, this is YouTube This is YouTube world now. Everyone's gonna
YouTube certified.
Everyone would rather
Yeah.
watch YouTube video on how to do something than read about it.
It's
Facts.
for most
Yeah.
people, especially those of us who grew up with televisions and things like that.
Yeah.
Most of us are visual learners.
Yeah.
Because of that.
Yeah.
Because we had that almost constantly in our formational years.
Yes.
So that's why, I mean, culturally, why it's just easy. It's the easiest way to share
Yes.
and teach.
Agreed.
All right. Well, thanks for listening this week.
You've been listening to Nerd Quest, a Wife Wednesday Radio Network production. Our executive producer is Dustin from the Lead Up Studios team in St. Louis, Missouri. Be sure to like, follow, and share us with your friends on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and more by searching Wife Wednesday. You can find Nerd Questing on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and more.